Thursday, June 27th, 2019, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Before I start today, again, I'd like to thank all my viewers, all my subscribers, all the people who also contribute to the channel through donations, through PayPal, through being patrons on the Patreon account, through shopping in the Teespring store. I really appreciate it very much. Also, I appreciate all the comments, be them praise or criticism. It helps me also get my ideas that you interact in the box below, in the comment box below. So thanks again. So today I want to talk about why I'm a proponent of sound money, of precious metals in the system, like a gold standard, and why I'm also a proponent that people should hold precious metals themselves, gold and silver. And this, of course, is not advice. It's just my personal experience from what I've done and from what I think is makes sense. So I want to talk about why I've got this, how can I say, this objective, this goal to put it out there. It has to go back to when I was younger. So this is a little bit about my background. I was born in Brazil in 1964, Maneco 64. You get the idea of the name there. I mean, I was fortunate to have grown up, in a family that could provide for me and my sisters. My father did well in business, but in Brazil, it's an unusual country. I haven't lived there for a while, but there's an old saying that Brazil is like a mixture of Belgium and India. Some very well-to-do, rich parts, and then very poor at the same time. So a lot of wealth inequality. And I remember especially in the 70s, when you had stagflation, not only in the US and Europe, but in Brazil it was even worse. And then also in the 80s, we got hyperinflation. And it was weird because at the time growing up, I knew there was something wrong with the money, and the money was becoming worth less and less. A lot of times we had different currencies. But one thing that I did not put together, two and two together, and saw, oh, this is why we have wealth inequality, was that inflation actually creates the, how can I say, the conditions that make wealth inequality so, such a big thing. And it's only been since, for example, I guess since 2002, when I started, when I bought some Krugerrands. And it's funny because I don't remember how I decided. It was probably because it was after the dot-com bubble and stock markets dropped a lot, and my wife and I decided, well, maybe let's buy a few gold coins. And it was after that I started looking into it. And to be clear, before that I'd never touched a gold coin before or a gold bar. Of course, I had my gold ring and jewelry, but when I bought the Krugerrand coins in 2002, 1 ounce, holding that coin was really something, wow, was something amazing. How heavy the gold coins are, and also gold bars. It's, if you are going to get into precious metals, you have to do it through the physical, buying GLD or SLV. Mining stocks is a different story. Of course, that's investment, but saving, it needs to be in physical. And from that, I started looking, with the internet being around back then, had been around for about 10 years or maybe a little less. You had a lot of access. You didn't have to go to a library, to articles, books, publications. I mean, how many of you remember that Amazon was actually an online bookstore in the beginning, even though now it does everything almost. So yeah, I started looking into gold, and I started realizing that gold had a massive and long history in the monetary system. Yeah, of course, I'd heard that the dollar went off the gold standard. We went off the gold standard in 1971 before, but didn't really put too much importance into it. So starting to look into gold, the history, the market. I started reading and reading. I like reading, and I like to study things. And yes, it's become an obsession, I guess, for me. But not because I think gold will, not because of the greed that I want, gold to go up and that it will make, people rich who have gold. But I think the most important thing about gold and silver is the sound money that in the society where the establishment or the leaders of our society, give the public sound money, where there is honest sound money, it, how can I say, it makes the conditions for prosperity and freedom especially possible. And that's what made me go back and realize, wow, that's why in Brazil, it was so bad, the inflation. We didn't have sound money. And Brazil didn't have sound money even before, the 60s and 70s. And then you look back at the history of the United States. The dollar was as good as gold until 1971. I know it wasn't a perfect gold standard from Bretton Woods to 1971, but it was better than having no gold standard. So that's one of the reasons why. And there are a few articles and books as well that really opened my eyes to this, to the fact that you can't have prosperity, kind of, a big middle class, because I'm not a proponent of socialism either. I don't think, I think trying to confiscate, because taxation is confiscation of wealth from one group to the other, and so is fiat money, of course. Central banking issuing fiat money, that's taxation as well, and that's confiscation from the general public to the very few, and that's what you get when you don't have sound money. I'm not saying that everyone's going to be rich. I think it's never going to be. There's always going to be those who have more than others. But I think in a fair sound money system, that becomes less accentuated. So I'm not a proponent of Thomas Piketty, the French economist. He wrote a book a few years ago about redistribution. But I think that the real problem is the money. So what are these two articles that I recommend you reading? And I'm not going to go through them right now, or else I'm going to take too long. I've gone through them before in videos in the past. So the first one, and this is not in order of importance or in order of which one I read first, is just in order here in the video. The first one is Human Freedom Rests on Gold Redeemable Money, and that's by Congressman Howard Buffett back in 1948. He was a congressman from Nebraska, and the article was reprinted from the Commercial and Financial Chronicle. And yes, he was Warren Buffett's father. So Warren Buffett's father was a sound money guy. The thing that I got from this, the major theme from this, is that a gold standard and gold redeemable money, as he says, puts a shackle on politicians, puts a shackle on them, running deficits and inflating the currency, right? That's the main gist of it. And then you get the other one that I read, and this is quite, you know, a lot more famous essay in the gold bug circles, I would say, or sound money circles. And it is Gold and Economic Freedom. This one was written by Alan Greenspan, former chairman of the Federal Reserve. So he's a sound money proponent, even though he became a central banker. And one could argue that it was him who started all this inflation that we've had in the last 30 plus years. And how did he start that? Well, by bailing out Wall Street in 1987 when we had the 520% crash. He injected the money, and then, you know, and it did the same thing in the next crisis, the tequila crisis, you know, the bond crisis, .com crisis. That's all Alan Greenspan could do, is inject more and more money. So yeah, he didn't stick to his guns there. But this essay, I highly recommend it. I'm not sure why he changed, you know, his philosophy there. Even though when I met Ron Paul at the Mises Institute in 2002, I went there for the 20th anniversary conference. Ron Paul said that Alan Greenspan signed this essay for him. He took it to Alan Greenspan, because Ron Paul was in the always in the House Committee on Banking, and he used to question Greenspan in the testimonies, and he showed him this essay and said, "Do you still believe in this?" And he said, "Yes, I do." And he signed it for Ron Paul, and he said the reason is political. You know, people want the inflation. He told Ron Paul, people don't want the sound money, so people want government spending and running deficits. You know, and I'm not just blaming the general public. I'm blaming also the upper class or the very wealthy. They want the inflation. They want the military spending. Yeah, they want the stock market always goosed up. So until people come to the realization that sound money is really important, things are not going to change. So why do I keep espousing this? Well, because I think people can be their own central banks and try to be on their own gold and silver standard to protect themselves. Hopefully, more and more people will, realize that sound money is important, and we will have political change. So yeah, this essay is very important as well. I recommend it. I'll put the link to both of them in the description below, and they're not long, and they're good reads. Greenspan basically talks about how the main gist of this is that without sound money, without gold, there's no way to protect yourself against inflation and the confiscation of wealth, as he calls it. That's one of the main parts of this. But he also talks like Howard Buffett, that sound money puts a chain on politicians, because the only way they can spend in a sound money environment where budgets are balanced is higher taxes, and people get very edgy, when taxes start increasing. The other thing I would say, sound money discourages wars, because wars are very expensive. So it would make people freer, more peaceful, the world, more prosperous, less inequality. Again, I think there will always be inequality, as I said. So that's why I'm here almost, virtually every day, a lot of times talking about gold and central banking and fiat currency. I was lucky in Brazil. I was able, my family was able to provide for me. We were lucky enough that, we were able to protect ourselves against the inflation. How do you do that? Well, a lot of times is owning property, physical assets, not leaving too much money in the bank. In Brazil, a lot of times was earning, having a business that earns foreign currency. That helps as well. and not keeping too much money in the local currency, only enough that you need to, for your expenses. So saving in depreciating currency is a really bad idea. And I think what's happening now in the US, Western Europe, UK is the same thing. We're becoming more and more like Brazil, like a third world country, and that's why the inequality is growing. So the other thing I wanted to talk about today is that we got the G20, and that starts tomorrow and ends on Saturday. But one thing I would say about the G20, because I was looking at their website, so it's in Osaka, Japan, right? The G20 summit. And it says here, Osaka, June 28th to June 29th. But I think the summit is already taken place, because if you look at their schedule here, the agriculture ministers meeting took place on May 11th. Finance ministers and central banking governors meeting took place on June 8th and 9th. Ministerial meeting on trade and digital economy took place at the same time, June 8th and 9th. So I think what we see now, the next tomorrow and Saturday, are just the leaders getting together and trying to agree on what their ministers already did months ago. So that's one thing I'd like to say about the G20. Of course, President Trump is supposed to meet President Xi of China there. And there's a lot of expectation now that they're going to come up with a trade agreement, but we'll have to see. That's why I showed you that schedule, because if they haven't come to an agreement by now, it means that their ministers didn't come to an agreement about 3 weeks ago. Markets, very quickly, because this is running long, this video. Gold, yes, it's kind of, I would say, consolidating at the moment, taking a breather. We're at 1404, down about 4.5. The low has been 1401. Yesterday, the low was 1402. We're still above the 1375 level, the breakout level. Be interesting if we can close the week above that level. So we got today and tomorrow still to wait for. Silver is down 4 cents, 1522. Stock market is a bit higher this morning. The Dow is up 100 or 1/3%. S&P up 14, just under 0.5%. NASDAQ 100 is up 46 or 2/3%. I mean, I've looked at the charts. They look like top, we have a top. We haven't really broken out. And, like gold has. Currencies, virtually unchanged, really. Dollar is a little stronger against the yen, so I won't go through them. I noticed yesterday, even though the stock markets have been weak the last 2 days, that bond yields actually spiked higher. So we need to keep an eye on this, which is unusual. The 10-year yield was up 5 basis points yesterday. This morning, it's up another 1 basis points at 206. And to finish off, the price of oil is still fairly elevated. WTI is at 59.01, down 2/3%. Brent is at 65.28, down 2/3 as well. So, sound money, precious metals. Yes, it is a protection. It will help you maintain your savings, the purchasing power of your savings. It might even make you a bit of profit, on a spike, and you might want to trade it. But for me, the most important thing about it is that it's sound money, and it's something much more than just trying to become rich or prosperous. It's about having a fair society and economy, in my opinion, peaceful, prosperous, and free, because it takes away the power from the elite, the 1%, from creating value, supposed value or credit out of thin air. And that's what it's all about. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. You can also follow me on Twitter, Steemit, and on DTube. So Billy knows that we're finished now and he's getting up so he can get off the sofa now and have his breakfast. I wish you all a great day. Take care. Bye.